Hello, here we go. Chapter 7 of Summer with the Marine. I am going to be, I actually feel a weird echo happening. Does anyone? Okay, maybe that's just me. Okay, I will start over here. I'm reading Summer with the Marine by yours truly, Ellie Hall, and this is Chapter 7, Eisley. Eisley and Ford walked back to the convertible at the drive-in movie theater in the dreamiest little town in the world. The sun had set, but the air had remained warm, and she was with her high school crush, her long-time love, and the man she'd thought she'd lost. After they settled into the seat in the car, she pinched herself, then squeaked because it had actually hurt. "What are you doing? Are you okay?" Ford shuffled the tray of French fries, drinks, and hot dogs between them on the seat and reached for her arm. "I'm fine," she said, feeling foolish. He wasn't supposed to notice. He hopped out of the car and then popped the trunk. He gestured her over. When she rounded to the back of the car, he passed her a can of bug spray for kids. "The bugs can get nasty here." Her lips peeled back into a smile. Good thing you came prepared. She'd always been able to rely on him. They went back to eat their dinner at the lanes surrounding them, filled in with moviegoers. Ford had opened up, mentioning how he'd wanted to ask her out and everything that had gone unsaid between them, but as soon as she reminded him that they were on a date, he closed off again. She wanted to say more about senior prom and how it had been the start of this sliver that had given way to her broken heart when he then disappeared for 10 years. Instead, she ate her French fries in silence. A few commercials flashed by on the screen. "It's a double feature, but we don't have to stay for both if you don't want to," Ford said. Sorry, I feel like I have a hair. "Have you seen the movie before?" she asked. "The first one is just out, part of the new Pirate trilogy, but the second is a Harrison Ford classic. A surprise. I guess they don't tell us until intermission." "I never realized that you share a name," she said, popping another fry into her mouth. He chuckled. "Well, I never told you that my mother wanted to name me after her favorite actor, Harrison Ford, but my father thought everyone would call me Harry Armstrong." Eisley giggled. "I definitely would have called you that." He playfully elbowed her in the ribs, bringing them closer on the long seat of the convertible. Ford's skin still held the warmth of the day, and she imagined melting into him. She had to resist. Going down that path would only lead to heartache when he left Blue Bay Beach, and when he left her life again to return to the service. She cleared her throat, eager to get back on track. They could date and become friends again, but that was as far as she could let it go. She'd tried doing the long-distance relationship thing before, and it had failed, splendidly, and in 6 cities. She sighed. "So your parents compromised and gave you the actor's last name?" "Not exactly. I think they named me after Dad's truck," he clarified. Eisley couldn't help herself, but laughed a little too loudly during the opening credits of the pirate movie. Well, half after the actor and half after the truck. Good thing the truck is still running and Harrison Ford is still lighting up the silver screen. Ford smiled and she felt the mood equalize. The movie began with a series of jump scares that brought Eisley even closer to Ford on the seat. She felt him walk his hand across the back of the seat, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulder. It was no hairy arm, but rather a strong, capable man arm. She shuddered a breath at the way it felt, warm, protective, and solid. It was like she belonged there by his side, and for the next couple of hours she let herself believe that and cast all her doubts and boundaries from her mind. During the intermission, an announcement was made that the feature with Harrison Ford was going to be Apocalypse Now, an old war movie. Ford stiffened by her side as the preview flashed on the screen. Bullet fire, explosions, wounded heroes. After serving in the military for 10 years and the scar on Ford's face, she was sure he'd seen some gnarly things. Eisley wasn't sure he'd want to see it on the big screen, but maybe he wouldn't say as much. She yawned and stretched her arms overhead. "Getting tired?" he asked. She shrugged. "I do have to work the opening shift at Coconut Cove Cafe tomorrow." "We can head back," he offered. She nodded. "Sure." As they put distance between themselves and the drive-in, he visibly relaxed. "I like the pirate movie. I wonder when the next one comes out," she said absently. "Next summer, I think." She wasn't sure where she'd be in a year or what she'd be doing. She only intended to live with her mother for the summer, and after saving money she'd go north again and do what? After living in the paradise that was Blue Bay Beach, she certainly didn't want to return to her dingy apartment in Baltimore. So far, the tips she'd made at the restaurant were decent, but she wasn't sure if it was because it was the summer season and things slowed down in the winter months. She'd always been a dreamer, but wasn't sure what she envisioned for her life. "Maybe we can go on another date next summer," she said. That, or the wind blowing on the long stretch of road, quieted them until they pulled back into town, passing the mansions illuminated with landscape lighting. The waves shushed on the other side of the road. Ford pulled to the side. "Want to sit on the beach for a bit?" he asked. "Aren't these private beaches?" she asked. He got out of the car. "It's okay, you're with me." She fought against wanting to be with him for the next summer and beyond. They crossed the road called Mansion Mile. A wooden path led them through the dunes and onto the beach. The moon shone overhead, casting a shimmering ribbon of light onto the bay. It was as if they could just keep walking onto that path and cross the water. Instead, they sat in the sand. The air was warm, but with the breeze, Eisley shivered. Once more, Ford wrapped his arms around her, drawing her close. She hesitated, then dropped her head onto his shoulder. They sat for a long time, as though trying to think of what to say, or simply enjoying being together, or both. "So, tell me about ice cream," Ford said at last. Maybe he was just waiting for her to warm up so he could talk about something cold without making her shiver more. A smile lifted onto her lips. "Well, it's typically made from a few simple ingredients, including dairy milk, cream, sugar, and salt. You can certainly add anything else you'd like." He nudged her. "I know that. I meant your mom said you were making ice cream." "Oh, it's like a hobby or whatever." "I get the sense it's more than that." "Well, I do love ice cream. Always have, always will. It's..." For a second she felt like she was talking about something, or rather, someone else, and maybe she was. Ford had always visited her at the ice cream shop where she worked during the summer when they were in high school. She couldn't bear to eat it then because she was stuck scooping it day after day, but in the winter he'd made them hot chocolate and plop a scoop of ice cream in it. "I started making it in college. The first flavor I ever tried to perfect was called hot cocoa, which is ironic, I suppose. It was a vanilla base with veins of chocolate fudge and marshmallow along with mint candy bits. Somehow, those flavors not only reminded Eisley of the treat they'd share when they were younger, but were also Ford's scent, slightly sweet but with a more rugged, manlier note like pure dark chocolate and laced with mint. Nestled close to him, she took a deep breath and closed her eyes. "What flavor were you working on today?" "Key lime coconut, inspired by that amazing pie at the restaurant." "That pie was tremendous, but I'd like to try your ice cream." "It takes a while to make, but it's worth the wait." A beat passed as the waves lapped softly toward the shore. "Eisley, you were worth the wait," Ford said. Her stomach turned a cartwheel. Had she heard him correctly? He turned to her. "I want to be with you. These last days I haven't been able to stop thinking about you," he said boldly. "No, it's been years now that you've been in my mind and in my..." He pressed his lips together as though having second thoughts about his confession, but then bravely pressed on. "I've made the mistake of not letting a girl know how I feel before. I learned my lesson." Did he mean his ex-wife? "I should have asked you to prom. I should have told you all those times we went to the movies, to the diner, and hung out after school. I wanted them to be dates." His chest rose and fell like making that confession took the wind out of him, and he was more than fit. "I made the mistake of not telling you how I felt. I thought I was just the girl next door." The words were practically a whisper, her voice stolen by the surge of emotion rushing through her like a great wave rising up and preparing to sweep away all her pain, resentment, and heartache. Whatever he said next would determine if the water soothed her or crashed down like a wall of white water. She held her breath. "You were more, Eisley, so much more." He shifted and met her gaze. She could breathe. Thank goodness she could breathe. She lifted her chin to meet his. "You know why I nicknamed you Eyes?" Ford asked. "Because it's the first sound of my name? Because you have the biggest, most beautiful, soulful eyes." He tucked a piece of hair behind her ear. His eyes searched hers. Emotion and longing and warmth swelled inside her. He inclined his head and leaned closer. "I've wanted to do this for a long time." Their lips met. It was like all the stars in the sky blinked and twinkled behind her eyes. It was like the warm water danced on her toes. It was like dipping underwater and surfacing for fresh air. No, it was better than that. Ford cradled her head with his hand and they shifted closer. His fingers tangled in her hair as he slowed the kiss as if to ask if it was okay. Her belly squeezed as she curled into him in answer. The kiss intensified as they exchanged years and years' worth of longing. Ford's massive hands gripped her, drawing her closer. Her hands weren't sure what strong, solid surface to hold on to, his muscular back or arms. His chest rose and fell. The hammering of his heart matched hers as they continued to kiss. It was no longer just the stars shining behind her eyes, but the whole galaxy joined, and she felt weightless, timeless, and like the only two people in the universe were the two of them. I had to try really hard not to giggle during the kissing part, but that was chapter 7, and I'm going to save this and hop onto a new live, so each chapter has its own IG live. So please hop on over to the next one.